What if the reason you don't have the money you want has absolutely nothing to do with your intelligence? Nothing to do with how hard you work. Nothing to do with the economy, your upbringing, your education, your connections, or the opportunities you've had, or haven't had. What if the real reason, the actual, root cause reason, is something running silently in the background of your mind that you've never once been asked to examine? A program, written in childhood, running on autopilot, making financial decisions on your behalf before your conscious brain even gets involved. Harv Eker called it your money blueprint. And in Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, he makes one of the most uncomfortable arguments in personal finance history. Your financial results are not a reflection of your effort. They're a reflection of your programming. But here's the thing that makes this book so different from every other wealth book out there. It doesn't start with strategy. It doesn't start with investment tips or savings plans or income formulas. It starts with a declaration that most people are not ready to hear. Until you change your inner world, your beliefs, your identity, your unconscious relationship with money, your outer world will keep producing the same results. No matter what strategy you use. That's a confrontational idea. I know. Because it implies that the problem isn't out there, in the economy, in the system, in the unfairness of the world. The problem is in here. In the operating system you're running. The one that was installed before you were old enough to consent to it. Today we're breaking down the 7 most powerful mindset shifts from Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. These aren't affirmations. They're not feel-good quotes to put on your vision board. They're the exact beliefs that separate people who consistently build wealth from equally intelligent, equally hardworking people who consistently don't. Let's get into it. Shift 1. Rich people believe. I create my life. Poor people believe. Life happens to me. Mindset shift number 1. And this is the one that sets the entire foundation for everything that follows. Eker opens with the most fundamental divide he found between wealthy people and everyone else. It's not knowledge. It's not skill. It's not even opportunity. It's locus of control. Wealthy people, almost universally, operate from the belief that they are the primary creator of their financial reality. That their choices, their responses, their decisions, these are the variables that determine outcomes. People who struggle financially, almost universally, operate from the opposite belief. That life happens to them. That external forces, the economy, bad luck, their boss, the government, their circumstances, are the primary variables determining their outcomes. Eker calls this the victim mentality, not as an insult, but as a clinical description of a worldview. One that is deeply comfortable and deeply expensive. But here's the problem with the victim mentality. It feels true. It has evidence. There genuinely are unfair systems. There genuinely are advantages some people have that others don't. The world is not a level playing field, and anyone who pretends otherwise is being dishonest. Most people don't realize this, but Eker isn't arguing that life is fair. He's arguing that believing you're a victim of your circumstances, regardless of whether those circumstances are real and unjust, makes you powerless to change them. Because if the problem is entirely outside you, the solution must also be entirely outside you. And waiting for external circumstances to change before you take action, that's a strategy that statistically leads to one outcome: staying exactly where you are. This is where it gets genuinely liberating. The shift isn't about pretending that life's obstacles don't exist. It's about reclaiming the only agency you actually have. Your response to those obstacles. The moment you say, I am creating this, even the parts one didn't choose, you become someone who can change it. The moment you say, this is happening to me, you become someone who can only wait. Rich people choose the first sentence. Every single day. Shift 2. Rich people play the money game to win. Most people play not to lose. Mindset shift number 2. And this one is sharper than it sounds. Iker asks a question early in the book that seems almost too simple to matter. What is your financial goal? And the most common answer he received, from people across every income level, was some version of, I just want to be comfortable. I want to have enough. I want to be secure. Comfortable. Enough. Secure. Those sound like reasonable goals. They sound responsible. They sound like what a sensible adult should want. But here's the thing Iker noticed. Those are not goals for winning. Those are goals for not losing. And there's a profound difference between those two orientations, in sports, in business, and in money. When your goal is to not lose, you become risk-averse. You protect what you have. You avoid the moves that could grow your wealth because they carry the chance of shrinking it. You stay in the safe lane, the familiar lane. And safe lanes, by definition, lead to average destinations. Most people don't realize this, but enough is one of the most financially dangerous words in the English language. Because enough is a moving target defined by fear, not by a genuine vision of what you actually want your life to look like. This is where it gets interesting. Iker says wealthy people play to win. Not recklessly, but with a genuine commitment to building something significant. They set goals that feel ambitious enough to be slightly uncomfortable. They take calculated risks. They invest in growth instead of just protecting against loss. And the key word there is calculated. Playing to win doesn't mean gambling. It means being willing to enter the game with the intention of actually succeeding, not just surviving. Most people are playing financial defense their entire lives. Wealthy people play offense. Shift 3. Rich people are committed to being rich. Most people want to be rich. Mindset shift number 3. And this is the one that makes people the most uncomfortable, because it forces a moment of genuine honesty. Iker draws a ruthless distinction between two very different relationships with the goal of wealth. Wanting to be rich, and being committed to being rich. Wanting is passive. Wanting says, yes, I love that, I think about it, I hope it happens someday, it would be nice. Commitment is different. Commitment says, I am willing to do what it takes. I am willing to be uncomfortable. I am willing to learn things I don't know. I am willing to fail publicly and get back up. I am willing to change. And here's the brutal question that sits underneath this distinction. Are you willing to change? Because Iker noticed that most people say they want to be wealthy, and simultaneously are completely unwilling to change the behaviors, beliefs, and habits that are producing their current results. They want different results from the same inputs, which is, by definition, impossible. But here's the problem that makes this so hard to see in yourself. Wanting can feel exactly like commitment from the inside. You think about it constantly. You read about it. You watch videos about it, maybe even this one. Most people don't realize this, but consuming information about becoming wealthy is not the same as being committed to becoming wealthy. Not even close. This is where it gets deeply clarifying. Iker says commitment has a specific, identifiable signature. It shows up in your daily schedule, in how you spend your first hour of the day, in what you do with money the moment it arrives, in what you study, in who you spend time with. Look at your schedule from last week. Not what you planned, what you actually did. Does it look like the schedule of someone who is committed to building wealth? Or does it look like the schedule of someone who thinks about it when they happen to think about it? That answer, honest and uncomfortable as it may be, is exactly where you are right now. And it's the exact starting point for getting somewhere different. Shift 4. Rich people think big. Most people think small, and call it being realistic. Mindset shift number 4. And I want to spend a moment on the word realistic, because it might be the most financially destructive word in common use. Iker makes a point that sounds almost offensive the first time you hear it. The size of your thinking determines the size of your results. Always. Not mostly. Not usually. Always. And before you push back on that, hear the specific mechanism he's describing. When you think small, when your vision for your financial life is comfortable, or stable, or just enough, every decision you make is calibrated to that scale. The opportunities you notice, the risks you're willing to take, the amount you invest in your own education, the people you surround yourself with, the standards you hold yourself to. All of it is calibrated to the size of your thinking. Conversely, the person thinking on a large scale makes decisions calibrated to that scale. They invest more aggressively in growth. They take bigger swings. They attract people and opportunities operating at that level. But here's the problem with calling small thinking being realistic. It disguises fear as wisdom. It disguises scarcity thinking as responsible humility. Most people don't realize this, but being realistic has killed more financial ambitions than any economic recession, any market crash, any unfair system ever has. This is where it gets interesting and a little uncomfortable. Iker asks, why not you? Seriously, why not you specifically? There are people right now with less intelligence, less education, fewer advantages, fewer connections, who are building extraordinary wealth. Not because they got lucky, because they refuse to accept that their circumstances determine their ceiling. So why not you? If you cannot answer that question without falling back on something external, something outside your control, that hesitation is your money blueprint speaking. And it's asking to be rewritten. Shift 5. Rich people focus on opportunities. Most people focus on obstacles. Mindset shift number 5. And this is the one that, once you understand it, you'll start seeing it everywhere. In conversations. In decisions. In yourself. Here's the pattern Iker identified after studying and working with thousands of wealthy and financially struggling people. When a new opportunity presents itself, a business idea, an investment, a chance to learn something new, an unfamiliar path, two types of people respond in two very consistent ways. The wealthy person's first question is, how could this work? The struggling person's first question is, what could go wrong? Same opportunity. Completely different initial orientation. And here's why that initial question matters so much more than most people realize. Your brain is extraordinarily good at finding answers to whatever question you ask it. Ask, how could this work? And your brain marshals its creativity, its pattern recognition, its problem-solving capacity to find pathways. Ask, what could go wrong? And your brain marshals that same power to find threats. Reasons to hesitate. Evidence that it's risky. History of similar failures. Neither response is irrational. Both are the brain doing exactly what it was asked to do. But here's the brutal truth underneath this. The obstacle-focused mindset doesn't just protect you from bad opportunities. It protects you from good ones too. Indiscriminately. Because it can't tell the difference. It's not designed to. It's designed to say no. Most people don't realize this, but every significant financial opportunity carries real risk. That's what makes it an opportunity rather than a guaranteed outcome. And if your first move is always to catalog the risk, you will always find enough reasons to wait. This is where it gets practical. Iker is not saying ignore risk. He's saying change the sequence. First ask, could this work? If yes, then evaluate the risk honestly and decide if it's worth taking. Most people never get to step 2. Because step 1 produces an answer they're not willing to hear. Flip the sequence. Ask the enabling question first. You might surprise yourself with what becomes possible. Shift 6. Rich people admire other rich and successful people. Most people resent them. Mindset shift number 6. And this is the one most people don't want to admit applies to them. Eker identifies a pattern that is so common, so culturally ingrained, that most people don't even notice they're doing it. When they see someone driving an expensive car, what's the first thought? When they hear about someone making $1 million a year, what's the emotional response? When someone they know achieves significant financial success, what's the story they quietly tell themselves about how that happened? For a lot of people, the honest answer involves words like lucky, corrupt, privileged, undeserving, or quieter feelings, resentment, jealousy, suspicion. And here's the brutal financial consequence of that response. You cannot simultaneously resent wealthy people and become one. Not because of some metaphysical law of attraction. For a much more mechanical reason. Your brain will not allow you to work toward becoming something you've decided is morally suspicious. It won't let you desire something you've unconsciously categorized as shameful or corrupt. So it quietly, invisibly, self-sabotages. Every time you get close. Every time an opportunity presents itself that could significantly change your financial situation, your unconscious mind pulls back. Because wealthy is the thing you resent. And you don't want to become something you resent. Most people don't realize this, but the resentment of wealth is often a defensive mechanism. A way of protecting your ego from the pain of not having something by deciding you didn't want it in the first place, or that the people who have it don't deserve it. This is where it gets genuinely important. Eker's prescription is not to pretend that all wealthy people are virtuous or that money is never misused. It's to find genuine admiration for people who have built financial success through value creation, and to use that admiration as information. Not, they're lucky, but, they figured something out. What is it? Can I learn it? Admiration opens a door. Resentment locks it. Which one are you standing behind? Shift 7. Rich people manage their money well. Most people mismanage, or avoid, theirs. Mindset shift number 7. The last one. And in some ways the most grounding, because this is where the inner work meets the outer discipline. Eker makes a statement that feels obvious until you sit with it long enough to realize most people are doing the exact opposite. Rich people manage their money. Poor people mismanage or avoid their money. And the avoidance part is what most people don't expect. Because here's the thing, there are millions of people who don't check their bank balance on purpose. Who don't open their credit card statements. Who don't know how much they owe, how much they have, how much they spend, or where it goes. Not because they're irresponsible people, but because looking at the numbers, really looking, is painful. And the brain is very good at avoiding pain. But here's the thing that makes avoidance so expensive. The money you don't look at doesn't disappear. It doesn't wait patiently until you're emotionally ready to deal with it. It keeps moving. Bills keep arriving. Interest keeps compounding. The gap between where you are and where you need to be keeps widening, quietly, invisibly, while you look the other way. Most people don't realize this, but financial awareness is not a personality trait. It's a skill. And like any skill, it gets easier and less frightening with practice. This is where it gets practical in a way that changes everything. Eker recommends a specific system he calls the JARS method, dividing every dollar you earn into dedicated buckets before spending begins. 10% goes into what he calls the financial freedom account, money that is never spent. Ever. It is invested, grown, and used only to generate more passive income. It is your seed money for actual wealth. 10% goes into long-term savings, for big purchases, emergencies, opportunities. 10% goes into education, because investing in your own knowledge pays the highest returns of anything you'll ever buy. 10% goes into giving, which Ika argues keeps you in a mindset of abundance rather than scarcity. And the remaining 60%, guilt-free, goes to necessities and lifestyle. But here's the problem most people will immediately have with this system. They'll say, I don't make enough to save 10% for a freedom account. I need all of it just to get by. And Ika's response to that is the most important thing in this entire lesson. It's not about the amount. It's about the habit. If you can't save 10%, save 1%. Save $1 a week. The amount is almost irrelevant at the beginning. What you're training is not your bank balance. You're training your brain to recognize itself as someone who manages money, not someone money flows through and disappears from. That identity shift, from money avoider to money manager, is worth more than any specific financial strategy. Because people who manage money attract more of it. And people who avoid it keep wondering where it went. 7 shifts. None of them about stocks or real estate or side hustles. All of them about the invisible operating system running your financial life right now. Let's run through them one final time. Rich people believe they create their life. Not that life just happens to them. They play to win, not just to survive. They're fully committed, not just occasionally interested. They think big, unapologetically and without calling it unrealistic. They look for opportunity first, obstacles second. They admire success in others, and use that admiration as a map. And they manage their money, with awareness, intention, and a system, instead of avoiding it and hoping for the best. Here's what I want you to hear underneath all 7 of those shifts. None of them require you to have money first. Read that again. Every single one of these shifts happens in your mind, before your bank account has changed by a single dollar. They are free. They are available to you right now. At this exact income level, in this exact circumstance, in this exact moment of your life. The wealthiest, most financially transformed people Ika ever worked with didn't start with more money. They started with a different story about what money meant, what was possible, and who they were in relation to it. They rewrote the program. And the results followed. Here's the question I want to leave you with, and I want you to actually sit with it, not just scroll past it. If you inherited your money blueprint from your childhood, from watching the adults around you, absorbing their beliefs, catching their fears, whose blueprint are you actually running? Theirs or yours? And is that blueprint, whoever wrote it, actually taking you where you want to go? Because here's the truth. You are the only person alive with the authority to rewrite it. And you can start, right now, with whichever of these 7 shifts felt most uncomfortably familiar. That discomfort? That's not a sign to look away. That's the door. Which of these 7 shifts hit you hardest? And more importantly, which one do you recognize most in yourself? Drop it in the comments. Be honest. I read every single one, and this is the kind of conversation that actually helps people. If this video resonated, if something in here made you pause, made you think, maybe made you a little uncomfortable, subscribe. Because that feeling is exactly what we're going for every week on this channel. Full breakdowns of every book referenced in this series are linked below in the description. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.